to the ashes of the Imperium.
Hello and welcome to Ashes of the Imperium. My name is Dan, and as ever, I'm joined by the wonderful Max. And today we are talking all about the Anphelion Project.
How you doing, Dan?
I'm good. I'm very good. I'm very excited to talk about this book. But how are you doing, Max?
I'm really good, Dan. Thanks, mate.
We thought we'd kind of go back in time a little bit. We'd exploit the access to the Warhammer Vault that we have, which has all the old Imperial Armour books. And we thought we'd just jump in. Because we talked about this before, didn't we? We talked about it in a previous episode.
Yeah, we have. I mean, way back when the Tyranid Codex released, we were like, oh, well, let's, we could look at some of the cool stories. And I think the Anphelion Project came up in that episode as a book to do. And I think, way back last year, we were like, let's do a deep dive on the Anphelion Project. But here we are.
Deliver on our promises. So we promised you an Anphelion Project episode, and here it is. So Max, tell us, what is the Anphelion? Well, what was the Anphelion Project?
So one of the Imperial Armour books, which were the campaign books that Forge World put out, from the mid 2000s to a little bit later on, sort of early 2000s, wasn't it? The first ones were released. But the Anphelion Project is quite different to some of the earlier releases, things like the Talos campaign and the Siege of Vrax, which were very kind of grand, large-scale stories, followed the course of an entire war. The Anphelion Project is much more of a kind of novella. It focuses on a very narrow, single planet, small task force that is sent to investigate a sort of a mystery, more of a mystery book. Sort of sci-fi mystery as opposed to the big grand war. It was released in 2006, and then a second edition, which tidied a few things up, was released in 2014, written by Warwick Kinray, and I think it stands alone in the Imperial Armour books in terms of its kind of scale and scope. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a spot-on summary. I think you're right. So this is Volume 4, Imperial Armour Volume 4.
Yep.
It is... It followed the Taros campaign, and it preceded the Vrax.
Yeah.
So what happened after this? After the Anphelion, we had Vrax 1, 2, and 3, and we will get to that in future episodes. And of course, we will be covering the best Imperial Armour, which is probably the Bad At War Parts 1 and 2. But more on which later. Well, we kind of skipped the Taros campaign because we're just so excited about Tyranids. Well, I certainly am. But we might dip back into the Taros campaign because it has some things that are very, very near and dear to us. For you, it's Tau, and for me, it's Legions.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I love that story. But anyway, we're not here to talk about that now.
No, and as you say, this book, I suppose, represents rather than a campaign and a large kind of multi-planetary story arc. This is just a snippet, a fragment of a small part of the Imperium's history. And for me, it's a really compelling story. It's a really interesting one. It brings into focus some really cool characters and supported the release of some amazing models. And we are talking back to 2006 now. So, when Legions came out for Taros campaign, they were mind-blowing.
Yeah.
But really, this is all about the Tyranids. And this saw the release of winged Tyranids.
Yeah, first time they'd appeared.
And featured the Red Scorpions as well.
Yep.
Who are an awesome chapter.
Yep. And we've also got some Cadian bits and bobs as well.
Yeah, I want to say they had the hazardous environment Cadians around this time.
Yeah, which still stand up today, I think.
Oh yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of context. What is this book? What was this book? And now we're going to talk a little bit about the story itself. So Max, why don't you, as the resident Anphelion lore master, why don't you tell us, set the context of this story?
Okay, well, let's as a geographer, let's talk about the location first. Where is this story happening? So this story transports us to Beta-Anphelion IV, which is the fourth moon of Beta-Anphelion, the second planet in the Anphelion system, and typical extreme 40k ecology. We've got an ammonia atmosphere, a very cold planet, but a cold jungle, this sort of grey, decaying, super creepy jungle. Really, really funky ecosystem, which is a very sort of unsettling atmosphere for this story to take place in. Hence the hostile environment troops that we spoke about. All the guardsmen that are entering this place have to go suited up because they couldn't survive in here otherwise. It is the site of a Mechanicus and Imperium research facility conducting unknown research, but
allegedly heretical research.
Allegedly heretical, yes. But it goes dark. It goes completely dark. The research facility itself is sort of spread across a really large area across the moon. I kind of think like creepy Forest Moon of Endor vibes. You know, if the Forest Moon of Endor was
full of Tyranids,
full of Tyranids and decaying.
I mean, the Ewoks were scary enough, right?
Yeah, I know, right?
Also,
anyway,
the ecosystem talks about like ponds of ammonia
mm-hmm.
and a high ammonia kind of content in the atmosphere. Imagine how much this planet or this moon stank.
I would absolutely
like the smell.
Yeah, it'd be like hot springs times, ugh. It'd be horrible, and I could sting your nostrils. It'd be absolutely awful. But the research facility spread out across this incredibly hostile environment. There is a sort of single central control complex, and then we have 3 containment zones, Alpha, Beta, and Omega, spread out across the moon. Very sort of Jurassic Park vibes there, right?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, and then we also have 3 sort of laboratories separated, spread out across the moon as well, Delta, Gamma, and Theta. So those are our key locations that this story takes place. How are you with the Imperial calendar, Dan?
The bit at the end is the millennia.
So yes,
M41.
It's M41. This all takes place in the year 850 M41.
Okay.
So that's about 100 years after the Tyrannic War, the first Tyrannic War. So the Imperium's familiar with Tyranids by this point, very familiar, overly familiar with Tyranids by this point. And Anphelion, the research facility on Anphelion, was set up to, that bit in Starship Troopers where they're like prodding the bugs and, if we know the bug, we can destroy the bug and all of that kind of stuff. It's there to learn about the Tyranids, we would seem. We would assume from what we're given.
Yeah, I kind of see it as, I think we kind of come to find this out later, is I see it less like that, but that's absolutely a good comparison. But also how like InGen in Jurassic Park or indeed The Lost World, they try and go back to the island to take samples and like weaponize them.
Yeah.
And I think they do it. Wayland Corporation in Aliens do it, don't they? Or is it Alien?
Yeah. They
2 or 4, or I lose track of which
Prometheus
one it is. Yeah. Like I've not watched the new one yet, but probably again in that one. But yeah, it is all those things, isn't it? It is like part Alien, part Jurassic Park. Kind of. It's such a classic trope, isn't it? Like go into the also The Thing. I think it's very reminiscent of The Thing, and I really love that film, the old John Carpenter film. And in fact, to be fair, the kind of sequel prequel thing was okay as well. It wasn't as good as the original, but
I watched that film when I was far too young, and I haven't had the courage to watch it again.
Oh my god, we should watch it. We should totally watch it, mate. It's so good, and it is so like it. I think for me, The Thing is like Anphelion Project the movie.
Awesome. Okay, well then
because
I have
it's
to
kind
watch
of
it.
Go into investigate an unknown thing, and then stuff just goes wrong.
It's classic horror, isn't it? It's a really good horror story. This book, it's Dead Space. It's what's that film? That's the spaceship that's been taken over by chaos, basically. Event Horizon.
Oh, Event Horizon.
It's got that, uncover a horrific tragedy as the team is like exploring. It's got some really cool tropes in it, and it's such an interesting mash of stories that we love. I think that's one of my favorite things about this story.
And so where do we find all this information from?
Okay, well, it's like I say, it's 850 M41, and the book is presented in a series of communiques between predominantly Lord Inquisitor Varius. He's been active in the area for quite a while, and a fellow Inquisitor, Inquisitor Solomon Lok, who is very forthright in his faith for the Emperor, right? He's kind of a straight up and down guy, a puritanical Inquisitor, and the story is told through their messages back and forth with some detail of the specific kind of actions and engagements between them. But, the messages are what drive the story forward. And in 850 M41, we're presented with a communique from Lord Inquisitor Various to Lok that states that routine astropathic communications were broken off with the research facility mid-transmission. I want you, Inquisitor Lok, to assemble an investigation team. He was told, Lok was told that the base was conducting unsanctioned, potentially heretical research. I need you to go in, find out what's happened, gather up the data, return, and then once you've got everything, call us in, and we will exterminate the planet. We will blow the planet up. So it's kind of a data retrieval mission, right?
Sure. And Lok is Ordo Xenos.
Yes. Yeah.
Does it say what Inquisition flavor Various is?
I am not sure. I've written in my notes Ordo Hereticus, but that doesn't seem right, does it? But I mean, maybe.
Yeah, I think he might. I don't know. It kind of feels like he's kind of Lok's boss, so maybe from the same Ordo.
Yeah.
But yeah, listeners, if we've missed that, do let us know in the comments or something. And but basically he tasks Solomon Lok to go and investigate this situation. And I think this is a great point to kind of point out the models. Like,
what Solomon Lok is.
Solomon Lok is such a cool model.
Such a classic Inquisitor sculpt. Yeah, one of my favourite Inquisitors by a long way. I think Kotias, old Kotias, is number one for me. But he's a hooded, robed Inquisitor, isn't he? He's not as bulky and as beefy as someone like Kotias. He's a very classic Inquisitorial model, and a really cool character.
And he's kind of tasked off by Inquisitor Lord Various to go to the moon.
Mm-hmm.
And he has attached to him some really interesting Elysians. So he does have some Cadians from the 266th Regiment.
Yep.
And an Adamic biologist explorators team led by Magos biologist Arthon.
Arthon, yeah.
And I suppose the two most interesting kind of attachments are the Elysians from Detachment 99 and also in support the Red Scorpions led by Karab Khan.
Yeah, Commander, right?
Commander Karab Khan, yeah.
Q80s, cocking rifle, gearing up sequence, right?
Absolutely.
Montage. The team's assembling, isn't it?
In their dropship / Valkyrie / Thunderhawk, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, the D99 Elysians are really interesting. And this is something I didn't actually realize originally. And this is kind of, in the reread, is they're kind of like Geno enhanced, aren't they?
Mm-hmm. They've been tinkered with. They've been a bit Jason Bourne, yeah.
Yeah, which I think is pretty cool.
And the whole reason for that experimentation is to make them better to fight Tyranids, right? They're kind of tooling them up, tuning them up to be anti-Tyranid fighters. And this is their first mission post experiment. They've been gene coded, and this is their first kind of run out, I guess, their first test.
Yeah, and they were survivors of a previous kind of Tyranid campaign, and then they were kind of sequestered or voluntold to go into into Inquisitorial service.
They're definitely an Inquisitorial unit, aren't they? They're not regular Imperial Guard anymore.
No, which I think is quite cool because quite often you see stormtroopers, Inquisitorial stormtroopers dressed in kind of black and red in that kind of very traditional Inquisitorial style. But it is really cool to see like something more like, I guess it's a mix between like the Armageddon Orc Hunters and that kind of like seasoned veteran, the tyrannic vets from the Ultramarines, that kind of vibe, but with the kind of spooky Geno tinkering that comes with the Inquisition.
It doesn't sort of describe any physical effects of this tinkering, does it? But I like to imagine that they look and they feel a little bit off, like if they were to mingle with the regular Militarum. I don't think they would get on. I don't know how you feel about that, but that's what I like to think in my head.
Yeah, I don't know. You never know what this kind of thing does to a man or woman in the 41st millennium. But it certainly gives you scope to either, if you're modeling D99, if you want to do a kind of Anphelion throwback, or if you're using that concept of Inquisitorial tinkered models, what could that look like? You don't have to go with Tempestus Scions. You could take Catachans or something like that and say these are pumped full of steroids and made super violent. You could make them Catachans, or you can make them something similar.
I think Catachans are muscly and violent enough.
Absolutely.
They would have been a good pick for this mission.
They would have been. There is a really cool picture. I'll try and include it in the video. There's a really cool picture of an Elysian drop trooper from Detachment 99 on page 27. And he's kind of crouched there with a plasma gun. And he's got this massive kind of like combat knife and some Tyranid trophies hanging from his shoulder plate. But also, most importantly, he has a classic pump action shotgun. I like to keep this for close encounters style on his backpack. And he just looks like an absolute badass, person.
They're a cool unit, aren't they? They're really good. They're really good. They're a perfect, they're a perfect introduction to this story for sure.
So take us through what happens next.
Okay. So at 194-850, the Cephestus, which is Lok's ship, it arrives in system and it links up with the Red Scorpions. And we are given Lok's first report during the mission to Varius, and it states that he attempted contact with no response. The Red Scorpions are preparing to make the initial entry into the control center, and the plan is that they will go down with their Terminator squads, make the landing zone safe, establish a bit of a beachhead. Then Lok will follow up with the Elysians, and then finally the Magos Artos will come down with the Cadians. So all of the kind of snippets that we're given, all of the narrative updates are presented with this, Imperial calendar. So the way that works is that a year, so 850, is broken down into about 1,000 parts, and each one of those represents about 8 hours. So the story, Lok arrives in system at 194-850, and then we are given the updates, counting up from there, from 194. And the whole thing from start to finish is over in about 3 days, which is a real kind of flash in the pan when you compare it to some of the other Imperial Armour books.
Oh, yeah. You've got like a paragraph that says, for 3 weeks straight, there was a bombardment against this, city or hive or something like that.
Yeah.
You're like, this is all done and dusted in a long weekend.
Yeah. So 194, they get there, they try and make contact, there's no response. And then at 198-850, so what's that? That's about 8, 16, 24. A day later, the Terminator squads shoot down. They find, so 3 Terminator squads are deployed to the command center, and they find that the base is empty. There's no power anywhere. All of the containment fences, which are, sort of force field fences, are completely down. So none of the containment zones are operational now. Squad Raum, which is one of the Terminator squads, led by Sergeant Raum, they find some signs of combat in the command center. But the rest of the forces start to arrive, and the Magos Artos begins to build up a picture of events. He sort of plugs his doodad into the computer core and starts to understand what's happening. As he's doing that, there's the 3 Terminator squads sort of set up a perimeter, guarding the command center. And this is the point of first contact. So as the Magos is starting to interrogate the systems and build up a picture of what's happening, the Red Scorpions are assailed by just waves after waves of gene stealers emerging from the jungle. You can imagine it's just like a dark scene, and the leaves are sort of starting to, the rustle and thing. And I imagine the jungle comes up pretty close to the command center, and just, waves of gene stealers emerge from there. And as you would expect, the Red Scorpions put up a really good fight. They begin to engage with them. They're using heavy flamers and assault cannons, and their storm bolters and hand-to-hand combat with these things. And they kind of make a steady tactical withdrawal back to the command center. But during that engagement, we have our first casualty, and the first casualty is Sergeant Raum himself. And there's another Terminators killed in that initial contact as well.
I think what's really interesting here is when you think about, the amount of value that a suit of tactical dreadnought or Terminator armor, represents to a chapter, because even it says it in the book itself. Terminator armor is rare. Most chapters retain a few suits, and even the vaunted Deathwing can only boast around 100 functioning suits. Like, if the Deathwing's got around 100 suits.
Hmm.
Like, how many suits of Terminator armor does the Red Scorpions chapter have? And so when when two of their number are brought down, like, just imagine what like a massive loss to the chapter that would be if that's not recovered. And obviously
This
that
would,
they've got apothecaries recovering the gene seed, and no doubt like tech adepts recovering the armor and stuff like that. But you just think, like, what an additional burden, like a logistical burden in the middle of a war.
yeah, it's a really significant blow, isn't it? Like, to lose 2 Terminators in the first engagement, it's like, oh damn, this is serious, And you can imagine if there'd been any guardsmen present in that as well, the effect that would have had on them.
Oh, for sure.
Like the Astartes are going down here. Like, oh boy, this is a serious mission.
Yeah. And I think it's really easy to lose track of the significance of things like that sometimes because of the scale of 40k and how, like, everyone's got a squad of 10 Terminators in their army because they picked it up in the new box set, that kind of thing. It's sometimes easy to forget that, and I think that's why that goes back to what we're saying about how cool the lore is and how cool the background is like, Terminators are so cool. They're so iconic, and they're so rare, and to even have several squads in support of him, it just goes to show how important this mission was. But then it also goes to show, like, what a significant blow losing 2 casualties would have been.
Yeah, absolutely, and such really lovely, like, as is typical with the Imperial Armour, because you get a nice mix of artwork, don't you? You kind of get the rendered kind of photograph style using the actual miniatures themselves, but then this, the page you're talking about with the describing the Terminators, lovely kind of classic color plate of the Red Scorpions Terminator, which is a really cool scheme as well. I like their scheme, but that image could be one of the most recent Terminators that's been released for 10th edition. It's just such a classic, classic sculpt. But anyway, this is the first engagement, and then at 199,850, they kind of regroup a little bit. They lost a couple of Terminators, but minimal losses. They saw off the first wave, and they start to establish the plan of action. They've made their initial assessment, and the communication is that D99 is going to set up their base at the command center and use that as a site to execute sorties, armed, not armed, of course they're armed, aerial sorties to the generator sites in an attempt to bring them back online. And once D99 have restored power, the Red Scorpions would then clear each lab, so 3 lab sites, Delta, Gamma, and Theta, and then that would allow the Cadians to follow up the 266th Regiment with the Magos to begin work on recovering the data. So Elysians, restore the power, then the Red Scorpions are the hammer blow to clear each site, and then the Cadians follow up. And all being well, within 24 hours, the mission should be complete. Various sends his message to say that Exterminatus will be enacted as soon as the forces are clear. It's all looking okay, Yeah, we were expecting to see some Tyranids here. Sucks that we've lost a couple of Terminators, but we've got a solid plan of action, and we'll be out of here in 24 hours. They were not out of there in 24 hours.
Spoilers, it did not go that well. And so you just said there, Various. You mean Lok?
Yes, I did.
So Lok sends a message, and his plan is to, I suppose, like, have the war over by Christmas, right?
Yes, yeah. We'll be back home by Christmas. Absolutely, yeah.
But fully, his last missive and this is to Various, says, I continue to plan for a 2-day deployment on this perilous moon, time enough to search all the lab facilities, recover any surviving experimental data, and embark back onto the Cephestus. After 2 days, I will gladly abandon Beta-Anphelion IV and submit a request to Exterminatus to deny the Tyranids the resources they are undoubtedly already extracting from this worthless ball of rock.
That's right, because you do see later that the Tyranids are starting to do their biomass shenanigans on the planet, aren't they? You can see the start of the transformation process.
For sure.
But they've got a solid plan. So they have a solid plan.
What could possibly go wrong?
And in 200, 850, so 4 8-hour chunks after the initial entry into system, the Elysians start to deploy. They go to the first generator 4. Lieutenant Jurev is one of the commanders of D99. Deploys. They begin to cut into the generator and begin to try and re-establish its function. but then a second wave of attack hits, and it hits all 4 generator sites at once. And in this wave, we see, again, lesser life forms. It's Gaunts and Gene Stealers, the Termagants and the Hormagants. Some of D99 are getting cut down by bio-munitions, and then there's Gene Stealers hacking into them from the jungle. But they're putting up a really good fight, and there's a really kind of awesome Apocalypse Now moment, isn't there, where the Vulture gunships start to do kind of ground strikes. So I've got such a cool image in my head here of the what's the massive Gatling cannon on the Vulture called? Punisher? The Punisher
Gatling cannon. Yeah, so I was
Yeah.
just thinking GAU 8, which is the real life Punisher cannon on an A10 Thunderbolt.
That's exactly what it is, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't go dakka, it just goes.
I'm just imagining las beams shooting across, and then just the night jungle being lit up by those double Punishers on the Vultures, and it just absolutely shredding.
So cool.
The vegetation. Now, did the Vulture, was that part of the release for this, or did that come before?
I don't know whether that was released for this book or whether it was released as part of the Taros, kind of the overall
Was it the
Elysian
thing. Right.
But it is, I think, one of the best flyers Games Workshop's ever done.
Oh, it's an absolute dream, isn't it? Yeah, because it is just a Valkyrie with some resin weapons stuck on the bottom. But
well, no. It's different. It's a completely different hull.
Oh, is it really?
So yeah. So it's got like a turbine thing.
Oh, that's right. It does, doesn't it? Yeah,
it's kind of got like this big central turbine, and I think which makes it a lot thinner.
Yes, that's right. Because it doesn't have the transport capacity, does it?
Yeah. So it's a lot sleeker. It's much more like a kind of an attack, and like an Apache attack helicopter vibe, rather than more like a Black Hawk Huey style, which is what the Valkyrie, I suppose, represents.
Yeah.
The fuselage is thinner and you've got this kind of halo of like a big like kind of turbine fan thing engine over the top of it. It is, as I say, one of the coolest flyers GW have ever made.
It's really good. I used to love the rules for that as well. I used to have a Kassakin force, and this is why I got confused with the models, because I basically just had a couple of Valkyries that I stuck some
Your Vulture gunship might just be in a Valkyrie with a couple of things on it, mate. But if you're using the proper model backs, then
it was the Vulture that we have at home, wasn't it?
Yeah. Mum, can I have a Vulture? No, we've got Vultures at home. Oh dear. Yeah, when you look at them side by side, you'll see what I mean. It's so different. We'll try and put pictures up on the video, and I've just sent it to you on WhatsApp as well, Max. But I think the Valkyrie is a cool enough model as it is, and of course you had the Vendetta, which was a kind of a tweaked version of the Valkyrie. Now the Vendetta was the filth back in the day. It had I think 3 twin link las cannons.
Yeah, I can see. Yeah, 2 under the wings and then 1 by the cockpit.
You've got kind of 1 either side of the cockpit. So
I like the engine on that.
Yeah, you can see what I mean on the Vulture now.
Yes,
like the whole central fuselage is the engine.
Yes.
Whereas the Vendetta and the Valkyrie have got kind of these 2 turbine engines on top over the shoulders. But yeah, it also makes you think how fast that model must have been, in the universe, I suppose. Yeah. And I think this kind of goes to, I think, one of my least favorite things about modern 40k is losing models like this. Losing, they're going to Legends, or they're not for sale anymore, so they're kind of dropping out, and ultimately one day we won't have them in Legends. And I just think, whereas playing a lot of Heresy, where Legends is absolutely, Legacies of the Dark Age are really embraced in narrative gaming, whereas I feel like in 40k, Legends are sort of less embraced.
10th edition is very Codex compliant, isn't it? It's lost a lot of the fun around the edges, I think. Yeah,
and so for me, I think I really embraced that initially, because I was kind of like, oh, cool. Because, actually, Red Scorpion's a great example. Red Scorpions are from an unknown founding, the unknown successor chapter. So to me, I've always been interested in them, A, because the lore is cool, and because, this is kind of peak age of me getting back into the hobby this kind of time. But also, being an unknown founding, I can be like, I'm going to use chapter tactics for White Scars today, and it just gave you that kind of hobby flexibility, right, that I am a fan of. Whereas in 10th edition, you don't have that, and I feel like that's great. You can use the White Scars style detachment to run your bikes with your Blood Angels, as we've discussed before. But also with that kind of opening up, you have lost, I suppose, some of the identity and flavor.
Yeah, definitely. And this is a time when all of that was so prevalent, right?
For sure, absolutely. So anyway, enough about cool planes and things like that. Tell us what happens next.
Well, 201, 850, D99, they suffer some losses at the generator sites, but they succeed. They're elite. They're very capable troops, and they manage to get the containment fences back in action. In the meantime, Lab Delta is cleared by the Red Scorpions. This is a very kind of classic Space Hulk type engagement. The squads of Terminators moving through the abandoned lab, the extraction fan slowly spinning in the ceiling, and the slats of light being punctuated as the gene stealers run through. But it's a real kind of Space Hulk on the surface of the planet encounter, isn't it? But they clear Lab Delta. The Cadian 4th Company from the 266th depart to start to retrieve the data and secure the site. And Magos Arthon pieces together the story that the Tyranid specimens who were present in the research lab in the containment areas began to evolve and expand far faster than was expected, and the researchers began to see whole new bioforms emerging. Tyranids with wings. Shock. So this is the first time that Tyranids with wings are seen. And, the models that came with this, we had the winged hive tyrant for the first time, winged Tyranid warriors, shrikes. We had the Paradan, the giant, Tyranid dragon, basically, right? That was the massive one. So all of these new bioforms are emerging in this research facility.
And this was when the Trigon came out. So the Trigon was initially a resin forge work model.
Yeah, and I mean, we just take it for granted now, right? That we've got such beautiful plastic sculpts of them. But yeah, this is the first time that emerged. Now, I wasn't in the hobby back then, but I can imagine that was like mind-blowing, right? Like one of the first kind of...
Yeah, and it was massive. It was huge. And obviously, you've got things like the Hierophant, which is like an actual Titan.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I suppose the Trigon, it was, but at that point, things like Dreadnoughts were the biggest thing. And we're talking about original Dreadnoughts, not Redemptor Dreadnoughts.
Yeah, box Dreadnoughts.
Things like Dreadnoughts, box Dredge, Castafaran Dreadnoughts were the big thing in your army. So to see something like, or a Carnifex, right, for Tyranids. So to see something like a Trigon, it was mind-blowing. It was a really cool model. And it was massive.
And I imagine this is something that you could legitimately run in a standard evening game, right? It wasn't like a big Titan that would come out once or twice a year. This was a model that would have a place in just a sort of fairly normal list.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think if I remember correctly, the Sire Tyrodules and things like that, they were still Lords of War because they were also massive.
Yeah.
Whereas a Trigon was kind of heavy support, I think.
So yeah, all these new bioforms coming out of the woodwork. Coming out of the jungle. Containment Zone Alpha was where most of the issues were occurring, but Zone Omega was the first one to kind of fall, the first one to collapse, and Arthos discovers that Lab Gamma, which is yet to be cleared, was the first one to be overrun. So they're really piecing together the picture of what happened here. So far the mission's going all right. We've had some losses. We've seen off a couple of engagements, but we've got the containment fields back up. We've cleared some of the labs. We've started to get the data back. And Lok sends a message. He sends a message to Varius at 201 850 that says, report everything that's happened. And he doesn't get much of a response. Varius basically sends him
he gets an out of office, doesn't he?
I'm away from my desk in, for urgent inquiries, please talk to blah, blah, blah. And
I think this is when you sort of start to see the wheels really come off, right?
Yeah.
So obviously the mission's gone terribly so far, but I think this is when I suppose the protagonists in the universe realize that things are actually, they're in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, no, I think, in the face of some stiff opposition, they've managed to achieve some goals, right? Like, if I was doing a performance review for Lok at the moment, I'd give him meeting expectations, right? We've given him a tough job, but some of the labs have been cleared. They've got a solid plan. But yeah, this is where it's like, oh no, Varius isn't very helpful, is he? Actually?
Not very reliable, perhaps, and is slightly foreshadowing, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so.
So tell us what happens next, Max.
Right, so we're about halfway through the engagement now, and at 202 850, the Terminators of the Red Scorpions move on to the next lab, They move on to Lab Theta again. They're attacked by Gene Stealers, but this is their kind of meat and drink. This is what Terminators are for. They manage to clear the complex. Fourth Company deploy around the site, but they are attacked by swarms of gargoyles. And even a flying hive tyrant appears at this stage. And this is the beginning of when it really starts to go wrong, I think. The Cadians are putting up a solid fight, but they end up completely surrounded, and almost before Magos Arthon can determine that something's wrong, he is quickly killed, and this is the first kind of our main protagonists dying is at this point, and Arthon is slain at this lab site.
I think seeing the winged Tyranid Prime in the new box set really gave me hope for the return of flying warriors, or shrikes as they were known. It was initially a Forge World upgrade kit, and it really helped to feed that plan for all flying Tyranid army that I have. So in the back of my mind. But the winged hive tyrant was a really cool model, and nowadays we've got one that's a lot more kind of aligned with the sort of previous metal version of the hive tyrant, but that kind of iconic hive tyrant look to it. Whereas this hive tyrant was during, I want to say this was kind of like 4th and 5th ed. So it was when the Tyranids were going through a bit of a copyright non-compliant phase and really kind of leaning into the xenomorph style.
So was it less chunky and a bit more lithe and animalistic, or because it's not a model I'm familiar with?
So very kind of reminiscent of the Alien Queen at the end of Aliens, with a huge crest. And again, this was a full resin model that Forge World did, and it's just such a cool model. And this was the first time we saw flying hive tyrants, and so again, mind blown. How cool is that?
Yeah, no, it would have been terrifying, right? They'd never encountered. I like to think that the gargoyles and the shrikes came first, and they're like, "Oh my god, Tyranids can fly," and they're really freaking out by this. And then after a few waves, the hive tyrant shows up, and they don't stand a chance, do they? At that point,
no, they are very much not long for this world.
No, but all the labs have been cleared at this stage, so every lab is cleared of Tyranids. But Lok soon realizes that the original plan has not survived contact with the enemy, and they're going to have to rethink.
As plans often don't.
Yes, and he calls the Red Scorpions back to the center, back to the command center. The plan is now to collect as much information as possible before evacuation becomes the only option left. He messages this out, but is receiving no response. The Vox network is just a garbled mass of cries and pleas for help. So everything is going very, very poorly at this stage.
And so what's the next plan for Lok? With the mission falling apart around him and elements of his forces rapidly getting killed off by this encroaching Tyrian force. What's his sketch? What's his plan? Is it to grab as much data as possible and then...
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly it. He can't... He's realized that the original plan to methodically extract the data from each of the labs is not going to work anymore. The resistance is too strong because while the Red Scorpions have been sipping around in their Thunderhawk and the Elysians have been zooming around in their Valkyries and their aerial assets, the Cadians, the 266th, they've been schlepping through the jungle to each site as it's been cleared. So we've met significant resistance at each of the labs where they've been deployed, but they've also been having to fight their way there as well. But with the loss of the Magos, the only option Lok has got now is to consolidate his forces at the central command center, like you say, get as much data as possible, and bug out when, at the absolute latest opportunity that they can. That's the kind of new parameters of the mission now.
There's as the Magus biologist dies, there's a really cool and visceral explanation or description of how one of the Cadian captains dies.
Oh, it's awful.
And it's
please share.
Captain Resk desperately waves his sword and las pistol to rally his fleeing men, and he feels a round hit him square in his carapace chest plate. The impact forced all the air out of him. With horror, he saw the acidic round eating away at his armor. His chest was already burning from the heat. He felt like he was on fire. "Get it off," he screamed to nobody in particular as he fumbled with the support straps, but it was too late. The ammunition had cut through the armor and into his flesh. Blood boiling up in the captain's throat, spilling forth from his nose and mouth. He collapsed backwards, convulsing with pain, trying to scream in agony, but only spewing a fountain of blood until his torso was drenched in it. Contorted in excruciating pain, he died as the burrowing creature ate into his heart. That's nasty.
It's awful, isn't it? It's like the scarabs from the
The
mummy.
scarabs from the mummy, absolutely. We've discussed this before.
But on steroids.
Oh yeah, awful.
Yeah.
So tell us about the next stage of this this little battle.
This is a significant timestamp, Dan. This is in my little timeline of events here, this is the timestamp that has received a red highlight.
Oh dear, a red highlight, Max.
Yes, because I think this is the point where the wheels completely come off now. But, prior to this engagement, there was still a slight chance that they would be able to retrieve some useful intelligence and evacuate in good order with some significant losses, but, not a complete loss, a Pyrrhic victory perhaps. However, at 2:03:850, D99 is garrisoning the command center, and they get attacked, not from the air, not from the jungle, but from below this time. So the Tyranids really are coming at them from every single angle now. Testing the defences. They've been gradually kind of ramping up, as Tyranids do. We've seen the flyers, but now come the burrowers. And large numbers of Raveners launch what turns out to be a feint attack. Because while D99 are dealing with the Raveners attacking them from the outside, a Trigon has forced itself into the complex itself. And what this does is it brings down all of the containment fences again. That they'd fought so hard to bring back up and get operational again. Now they're gone too. And then the final blow in this really decisive engagement is the landing field is assaulted by two Haradans come zooming down from the cloudy, acrid atmosphere, and they absolutely decimate the air support, the Valkyries, the Vultures that were kind of centralized at the command center. And it's at this point that Lok orders a full regroup. Everybody back to the command center now. Commander Cullen receives this order this time. The message gets through. He starts to depart Lab Theta, but as they move above the clouds of ammonia in their Thunderhawk, it gets mobbed by spore mines, and it doesn't take very long for the Thunderhawk to get completely overwhelmed, and it ends up crashing into containment area Omega. So the Thunderhawk goes down.
With Commander Colm in there with it.
Absolutely. Commander Colm, the Terminators, the kind of the core group that's been doing so much of the good work. Like, I think a lot of the successes that have happened in this action so far has been, off the back of the Red Scorpion Terminators, right? They've really been pulling their weight. There is an apothecary.
Yeah, this is a great bit. This is a really cinematic moment. And I think what you've just said there really highlights again the importance of this moment.
Yeah.
Is because the Red Scorpions have been, I suppose, like the linchpin around this mission. And, had this just been humans,
it would have been over much sooner.
It would have been over, in minutes.
Yeah.
But we're on day 2 or 3 at this point. And so having the Red Scorpions on side and in support is critical. And Lok basically says there's no survivors in that crash.
Yeah,
the Thunderhawk's gone down.
Don't bother. Yeah,
sending more men out to look for them is condemning those men to death as well. It is a fool's errand. I will not sanction any rescue mission. Our priority must be our survival until an evacuation can be effected. We must complete the mission. But as you say, Apothecary Rael is like, hell no! Brother, no! So he's we will not leave our brothers to rot in this place. Dead or alive, they must return to the chapter. The chapter must have its dues.
Yeah. So he leads. He sets out with I think all of the remaining Red Scorpions at the command center. He leads a rescue mission via Rhino, doesn't he? So the Rhinos and the Razorbacks abandon Lok at the command center, and he's not happy about this, is he?
He's certainly not. Certainly not. Again, what this little paragraph is phenomenal. So basically, Apothecary Ryle snaps his helmet into place and kind of turns around, and Lok basically says, "This mission is under my command. You and your brothers are under my authority. The power of the Emperor is vested in me. Dare you gainsay the word of an Inquisitor?" And the Apothecary just doesn't reply. Just carries on walking.
Yeah. Yeah. Imagine how that would feel for Lok, right? Because
For sure.
he is by rights the ultimate authority on this mission.
Yeah.
But it's just like, gosh, I used to be a teacher, right? And I can remember in like my early years of teaching, I'm like early 20s, I'm at this, barely getting by. And it's just that moment where you tell one of your students to do something and they just flat out refuse. And you're just like, yeah, I have no power here. There's nothing I can do. You've completely got me. So Lok has his trainee teacher moment.
Yes. When he realizes that actually it's all this is authority and power is all an illusion.
Yeah, they do not respect his authority. And Ryle moves into the jungle to head. And this is, I think this is the most cinematic moment. We have our Black Hawk down moment at 2:04:850 as Commander Cullen and his Terminators fight clear of the wreck. So we have 15 Space Marines remaining, and there's one Dreadnought, Brother Halar, who is awakened as the Thunderhawk crashes.
As one would be.
Who woke me up? Yeah. Cut down that rocket. But there is this Black Hawk down moment as they set up a defensive perimeter around the Thunderhawk.
This would make for an amazing kind of Golden Demon or Armies on Parade diorama.
Yeah, wouldn't it?
If I remember correctly, there was a crashed Thunderhawk Forge World tile.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it was specifically for this book, but there was one of their kind of Realm and Battle boards, Crashed Thunderhawk one. Just how cool would it be to do like a Crashed Thunderhawk tile, 2 foot by 2 foot with a bunch of Red Scorpions defending?
That'd be amazing, wouldn't it?
Wouldn't it just? It
could look something like Ben Cantwell's recent Golden Demon, couldn't it? The Blood Angels Terminators fighting for Tyranids, and where the assault cannon that blew my mind has been painted to look like it's spinning and it's in motion.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's kind of a Space Hulky kind of one.
Yes.
Yeah. That's insane.
metal.af.miniatures on Instagram if you want to see that. It's one of his pin. It's one of his pin posts. It's beautiful. So yes.
And the weirdest thing was that one silver.
I know. Oh, gosh, Golden Demon's insane these days, isn't it? Yeah. It's unbelievable quality. But hey, aren't we lucky to just get to enjoy it all? Like, brilliant. I'll take the arms race. So yeah, this moment would make an unbelievable Golden Demon entry, wouldn't it? But yeah, Brother Halar awakens. He's fighting a giant Carnifex that turns up to the crash site. Ultimately, they kill one another and sink into the swamp. But it's not going well.
And that kind of sacrifice, those moments of like losing one of the chapter's ancients again shows the kind of the impact. Like this must be like it's a balance, isn't it? On the one hand, you think like what an amazing blow for the chapter and what a significant moment in the Red Scorpion's history. But like it's just a speck, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like we're sat here poring over this book, being like, oh wow, what a significant book, and it's from like from my early hobby days, yada yada. Yeah. Whereas this is, in terms of like the Imperium's timetable, this is just
it's nothing.
Not even a footnote,
nothing, is it? No. But Commander Cullen will be feeling these losses, right? Like he's losing some significant assets in this engagement.
For sure.
He will not be happy. I also think that Thunderhawk, Black Hawk Down fight would be a really fun kind of narrative mission to play out of this as well. I think that'd be a really good inspiration for a fun mission. You could really like tool up the Terminators. You could give them like captain profile, and you've got your 10 Terminators and 1 Dreadnought versus waves and waves of Tyranids. I think
see how long you can, how many waves you can last.
Yeah, but at 2:05:850, Lok submits another report, and this is where I think his heart really drops. Because it's at this stage that he learns that the Cephestus, his ship, the one that took him into here, is now on its way out of the system. The Red Scorpions are now the only way that Lok is going to get off the planet. And he's told by Varius that the reinforcements won't be deployed. So immediately after, Apothecary Ryle completely ignores his authority. He feels his grasp on the mission. His authority's been completely undermined. The Red Scorpions, he cannot depend on them. He then discovers, the Red Scorpions are the only way that I'm going to get off this.
Because he gets sort of dumped by text, doesn't he?
Yeah, awful. Ghosted. Various ghosts.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't get ghosted. At least he gets a response. Varys isn't. I'm not sure what's worth, but yeah, he gets sent this email. It is with deep regret that I must inform you that the reinforcements I had ordered to your aid have had to be recalled as a matter of utmost urgency. I can no longer offer any assistance in this matter, and trust only in the Emperor to deliver you from your terrible predicament. Praise the wisdom of the Emperor.
Yeah, this is it. This is it. I think his fate is sealed at this point, right? Poor old Lok, stalwart servant of the Emperor. I think he's making his peace at this point.
Yeah, I think this is the moment, but he has one chance, doesn't he? He has one chance, and that's the Red Scorpions.
Yes.
They have means of getting off planet.
They do, and at 2:06 8:50, 8 hours after he learns that the Hephaestus is gone, wave after wave after wave are assaulting the command center. You can imagine the piles of corpses that are lining up here now. And at this point, a barbed hydrogel smashes the remaining mechanized support. So it was looking bad. The Imperium forces launched a bit of a counterattack with the hellhounds that they had remaining, and they were, having quite a good effect and easing the pressure somewhat. But yeah, this hydrogel shows up and just smashes those to pieces. Lok is then essentially making his peace with the Emperor at this point, I think he's ready for the final blow. But at the last second, this hydrogel is down by the las cannons of the Red Scorpions as the rescue mission returns successfully. Lok orders the Astartes to prepare for the next wave, but Commander Cullen refuses at this stage, and in the final nail in the coffin, they refuse his order and leave in their remaining Thunderhawk for Lok to see out his last moments at the command center as it is overrun.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's such a cinematic ending, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and really, really, really bad. And have you got the paragraph with Cullen's last words?
His last missive.
Yeah.
Because he sends it to Varys, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does, yeah.
The first Tyranid attack has been repulsed, barely. Losses are again heavy. My force is reduced to just 120 able-bodied men. Still no contact from the Hephaestus, although repeated attempts have been made to contact the vessel. The betrayal runs deeper still. Commander Khan has begun his own evacuation operation, and as I dictate this entry, we are to be abandoned to our fate. On whose orders? For what reasons? I do not know. How long we can hold out, I cannot say. We will fight to the last. Hours, days, it matters not, for without assistance, death is now certain. I can hear weapon fire. They are coming again. This is the final entry in this log. The Emperor knows I was his loyal servant until the end. Death to the Xenos.
So cool.
Honestly, I'm getting goosebumps just reading that. It's just so cool. It's such a badass moment in 40k.
He is a brave man, isn't he, Lok? He's
obviously an awful person because he's an Inquisitor, right? He's obviously done some horrendous things to uphold the authority of the Imperium, but you can't help but the pathos in this writing, you can't help but kind of sympathize for him.
Yeah, he's a useful idiot, isn't he, for Varys and his schemes.
Yeah, and this is when we find out about the schemes. Although I will quickly point out that, on the same page that little sort of transmission is located, it talks about how Lok basically kills a Hierophant Bio-Titan with a bunch of grenades in a kind of Luke Skywalker opening up the belly of an AT-AT with a las cannon, a lightsaber, and throwing some thermal detonators inside. He basically explodes this Bio-Titan, and he's kind of lying there on the ground oh my goodness. There's that's at least that's gone. And then the guardsmen look up above him, and he's like, "Oh, is it our rescue ship?" And he turns around, and there's 2 more of them coming his way. Oh, it's just
Poor old Lok. Can't catch a break.
But
yeah, we find, don't we, in the sort of after action reports that Varys has engineered this whole thing from the start. Of course, he was the one that ordered the defenses and the containment fields to be sabotaged. He was the one that wanted to send Lok and D99 specifically, and the Red Scorpions there to fail, because he was essentially looking to get some data back, some sort of field testing data back. He wanted the D99 program to be expanded. So, hey, guess what? D99 performed really well. Let's roll that program out more. He wanted there to be more foundings from the Red Scorpion gene seed, and he was petitioning for them to proceed. Red Scorpions did really, really well. Let's, further the course for that. And it also rid him of a potential rival in Lok. So it was just a big deception to further Varius's schemes, really.
Yeah.
And, ultimately the planet is destroyed, Exterminatus is ordered. But Varius kind of got everything that he wanted. And I really like the kind of one of the final communiques we get, which is, from the sort of Inquisitorial command back at Terra, saying, essentially, it's obvious that Varius is a bit of a rotter. We're going to put him under investigation, get the Calidus ready, but let's just hold off on that order while he's still getting results.
Yeah, that's crazy, isn't it? I love it. Like the last line of the book is, as a precautionary measure, Lord Varus's death warrant has been prepared, but it remains unsigned until such time as he outlives his usefulness to this blessed Imperium.
Oh, gosh. Just everyone's an asset, right?
Until they're not, right?
Yeah. And what
So
a book.
cool.
What
a book. Yeah.
Yeah.
So awesome. It is definitely one of my favorite kind of stories in the 41st millennium, and certainly gives you so many cool ideas for modeling or armies. And I think that can transfer into the kind of current 40k. This is obviously pre 8th edition, pre Indomitus Crusade, but you could easily be inspired by this. And I think, to be honest, that's kind of where I'd be at. I wouldn't necessarily use kind of like old Space Marine models. I'd just do it in Primaris, for example.
Yeah, absolutely.
But perhaps that's if we find time between recording Imperial Armour kind of narrative stuff, so we might do an episode on how a follow-up episode on how we can bring this to the tabletop. So like environment, scenery, how you'd model it, what scenarios you might play. We talked about like that Black Hawk Down style one, and also what forces we'd play, and how to represent, I suppose, like the different stages of. Do you go for like an all flying Tyranid army, which obviously is my preferred option, to represent those kind of clouds of spore mines and the flying hive tyrant, or do you go for a force that's representative of the kind of ambush from the Raveners and the Trigons? And it's definitely scope there.
Yeah, and that's the thing with these Imperial Armour books, isn't it? They're just such good inspiration, and then you can use your rules toolbox to play out whatever you want from this. You could use the boarding action rules to play out the clearing of one of the labs, for example. There's so much you could do. There's so much you could do to have fun with this story.
Absolutely, yeah. Such a treasure trove of inspiration. Hopefully you enjoyed this narrative run through of the Anphelion Project, and stay tuned for more similar narrative deep dives as we cover other Imperial Armour books, as well as how we might bring it to the table. And so maybe to fuel our inspiration for the next episode, how would you bring this to life? Like what force would you bring? What, maybe if you're running with the new Space Marine Codex, the 10th edition Codex, what detachment would you use? What do you think is best representative of Red Scorpions, Terminator, kill teams, that kind of thing? Or perhaps do you think kill teams is the best way to do it? I think the new drop science would be an awesome way to represent Elysians potentially, but we'll maybe discuss that in a future episode. Until next time, keep calm and crusade on.